I was born in Birmingham, Alabama in 1943, when it was America's most segregated city. The process by which I came not to believe what most white children of my era were taught about race and the Civil War was a haphazard affair. As a small child, I became fascinated with all things rural and ancient, largely as a consequence of visiting my grandparents' farm in Alabama's poorest county, a throwback redoubt of Appalachian folkways called the Free State of Winston. It was so nicknamed because anti-secession farmers in the Hill Country made a legendary attempt to withdraw from Alabama when the state left the Union in 1861. In 1951, Esther Garrett, a tiny, ferociously flamboyant teacher who called herself Mama Tadpole, introduced me and the other tadpoles to a glorified version of Alabama history, including the legend of the yellowhammer, our state bird. The black speckles on its tawny breast represented the bullet holes inflicted on Confederate soldiers by the Yankees, Mrs. Garrett explained. The red band on the bird's neck stood for the blood Alabama boys shed for the Southern cause, the yellow on its wings for the flashy scarves the soldiers wore on parade. The imagery was intended to school us in that crude, defiant, fatalistic sang-froid much admired in the heart of Dixie then and now. Paradoxically, she also taught us to affect a high-toned accent for singing the state song. In the chorus, "Alabama, Alabama, we will aye be true to thee," we called our state Alabama, the posh enunciation to show we didn't talk like hillbillies. The next school year, I fell under the tutelage of the more reserved Tallulah Rose Love, a stately matron who was in charge of the school library and presided over the reading list on which our report card marks were based. Miss Love doted on me and my two older siblings as brighter-than-average kids. I was shaken when I laid my list in front of her, and she noted with sadness and surprise that I had read only one book in 6 weeks. It was Mark Twain's difficult miscegenation novel, Pudd'nhead Wilson, a didactic condemnation of prejudice based on skin color. To this day, I'm amazed that it found its way into a Birmingham Public Schools library, given that the state and city boards of education strictly policed our reading materials for signs of excessive sympathy for Negroes, communists, or our enemy in the war between the states. I had plowed through a text that was far beyond my understanding, never quite sure of why one infant was considered black and another was white. I'm pretty sure Miss Love didn't know what the book was about either. She just wasn't going to give an E for excellent to a slacker who could finish only one book a month. Miss Love's mother was an Owen, and she provided our entree to the famous woman in Montgomery, the legendary Miss Marie, the widow of Thomas McAdory Owen. Until his untimely death at the age of 53, Tom Owen was a leading figure nationally in higher education. Despite its backwardness in so many fields, Alabama was the first state to establish a state archive to preserve official papers, and as its founder, Dr. Owen hobnobbed with the nation's top scholars at American Historical Association conventions in Manhattan and New Orleans. He had also been the National Historian General of the Sons of Confederate Veterans and an energetic promoter of the Lost Cause School of Civil War scholarship among American historians. Newly widowed in 1920, Miss Marie used her political connections to secure what she called her meal ticket. Since Marie Bankhead Owen's father was a longtime senator from Alabama, and her brother William B. Bankhead was the Speaker of the House of Representatives, FDR had given her a New Deal grant to construct the Archives building as an imposing alabaster shrine to her late husband. She was named only a week after his death to succeed her husband as director of the Alabama Department of Archives and History.